When Until Dawn was first revealed way back at Gamescom 2012, many, including myself, were intrigued but skeptical. The premise of the then PS3 title was promising. However, I was unsure that a game with such heavy emphasis on motion control could prove to be effective as anything more than a tech demo for PlayStation Move technology. As time went on, the game rarely surfaced again until it was essentially delayed indefinitely. Normally, this would be a death sentence for a game to be lost forever in development hell. But last year at Gamescom once again, Until Dawn was re-revealed, this time with a fresh coat of paint and significantly altered mechanics and development philosophy. The game was finally released on August 25th of this year and took its place among other high-budget PS4 exclusives. But did the long and drastic rebranding make Until Dawn worth the wait? Find out in this Player 2 review. Until Dawn is the story of 8 teenagers who return to a snowy mountain lodge after the mysterious and unsolved disappearance of two of their friends 1 year prior. By exploring the lodge and surrounding areas, the teens gradually unravel the mystery of their friend's disappearance, as well as the appropriately dark history of the area, all the while facing horrors of their own and trying their best to survive until dawn. If this sounds like the setup to the most cliche teen horror movie of all time, then Supermassive Games has achieved its goal. Similar in style to the excellent film The Cabin in the Woods, Until Dawn does a great job of recognizing and playing off of all the best tropes and cliches of classic teen horror movies such as Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and many others. By doing this, the game satirizes these plot elements while simultaneously embracing them to near full effect. This lends a sort of tongue-in-cheek tone for the player throughout the experience, but also allows them to gleefully revel in all of the classic parts of the now decades-old teen horror genre. That is, when they're not too scared. Which leads me to the next natural question about the game. Is it scary? Well, this depends on who you ask. As I believe an intentional homage to teen horror tropes, many of the early scares in the game rely on build-ups to jump scares. Veterans of the horror genre will no doubt see these coming a mile away, but many will still be startled. A good amount of these early scares turn out to be false jump scares. I believe this was an effort to recreate the feeling you might get during a horror movie of thinking yourself dumb for being scared of something completely harmless. This does a good job of presenting a sort of flippant and playful tone in the first half of the game that mirrors the meta-narrative on display here. The game also incorporates a good amount of gore-style horror, a la the Saw films, as well as paranormal and creature elements as well. This creates the idea that the game is truly running the gamut of different teen horror elements, and does so effectively given the longer length of the game when compared to film, running at about 8 to 10 hours. At about the halfway point, it takes a turn for the serious and becomes full of much more legitimate scares. I won't be spoiling any of the plot twists in this review, of course. Some have said that the shift in tone from playful to serious is a bit jarring. While I agree that it could have been a little smoother, I think it makes sense given the narrative as a whole, and it definitely made the game a lot scarier for me playing it alone in the dark at 2 a.m. So, in short, yes, the game is scary. In fact, it's scary in lots of different ways, each reflecting a different aspect of the horror genre. There are jump scares, gore, the supernatural, creatures, and excellent atmospheric tension, all wrapped up into a surprisingly cohesive package. At least one part of this game is bound to scare most players, including more seasoned horror fans. I know I had a hard time sleeping after the second half had begun. Of course, we can't have a review without mentioning the cast of characters of Until Dawn, especially given as they're fully acted out by a great young cast, including Hayden Panettiere, Brett Dalton, and Rami Malek. Despite playing characters significantly younger than themselves, the actors do a great job of filling the various archetypes that one might expect to find in a teen horror adventure. We have Mike, the popular guy, Emily, the bitchy girl, Matt, the jock, and the list goes on. These characters are fully realized by the great acting across the board, especially the excellent Peter Stormare as the mysterious Dr. Hill. While the actors no doubt have talent beyond the material, the writing and characterization of the 8 friends places them right where they need to be an effective part of such a story, showing the true awareness of the teen horror genre on the part of the game's writers. As a whole, the story is a generally fun and exciting teen horror romp that occasionally revels in its own ridiculousness. but also offers some legitimate and creative scares later on. If I had one wish, it would be for this tonal transition to be a tad smoother, but this in no way hinders the overall experience. Since Supermassive Games has employed such a talented cast, it is fortunate that they went the route of full motion capture animation for the game's characters to really bring them to life in a spectacular way. Using the Killzone Shadowfall engine, the character models are presented in generally stunning detail, especially in their fantastically animated faces. It's exciting to see how far performance capture has come in gaming recently, and these advancements are on full display in Until Dawn. Characters' skin reacts realistically to lighting and facial movement, which is some of the most nuanced I've ever seen. Couple this with some of the most realistic eyes I've seen in a game, and you have graphics which help to create a much more immersive and emotional experience. Granted, there are a few instances where the characters' faces slip into uncanny valley territory. However, these are never numerous enough to hinder the experience in any meaningful way. Similarly, the environments in Until Dawn are simply breathtaking. The snow-covered cliffs and woods, as well as the amazing interiors, are crafted with such attention to detail that there were many instances when I honestly forgot I was even playing a game. The lighting is also fantastic and serves as a great tool for creating immersive, ominous environments. In addition to this, the game runs very smoothly. Aside from a few instances of texture pop-in and rare slight frame rate drops, which are nevertheless worth mentioning, the game ran just about as smoothly as I've come to expect from a modern game of this style and scale. The sound design and music are also great and are, in my opinion, probably some of the greatest strengths of the game overall. Sounds of howling wind, creaking floors, and footsteps permeate the game and help to create a fantastically tense environment. This is supplemented in no small part by the game's soundtrack, composed by Jason Graves. Graves has made a name for himself in horror games such as Dead Space and Fear, and for good reason. Until Dawn's score is equal parts tense and beautiful, as one of the more melodic in the genre. All this comes together to create a fantastic atmosphere that complements the story and gameplay wonderfully. The gameplay of Until Dawn is essentially that of classic adventure games of years past, but refined in the same way as games like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. The game does its best to present itself as an interactive movie of sorts, with the player having control over each of the 8 characters over the course of the game. Until Dawn's gameplay also places heavy emphasis on its butterfly effect system, which changes the emerging story based on the player's decisions. These effects can be as simple as altering relationships between characters, and as drastic as resulting in the death or survival of any character at any time. As the system's name suggests, the smallest decisions can have drastic consequences. I was pleasantly surprised by how well this was implemented. The choices presented to you are seldom simple, but the consequences of such decisions almost always make sense, at least in hindsight. This essentially leaves it up to the player to have enough foresight to predict the result of their various decisions, and makes Until Dawn a much more thoughtful experience than I had anticipated. Of course, there are some plot points that will always play out the same to ensure a cohesive story. However, by the end of the game, you might have all or none of the characters survive, or anywhere in between. Depending on who lives or dies, you may also have entire sections of the game blocked off to you, which is simultaneously frustrating and great for incentivizing players to go back and attempt to make better decisions in order to see new parts of the game. This gives the game great replay value, as the story can be very different each time you play it. I myself played through twice and had an entirely new section of the game open to me the second time based on one simple decision that I made differently. I also love that there are no game over states. Every decision made is a valid one, and the story, however altered, marches forward no matter what happens. I have to give this system praise for creating so many different outcomes to the game while still maintaining a story that always makes sense and feels appropriately paced. However, don't think that Until Dawn is simply an 8 to 10 hour interactive cutscene. While there are many QuickTime events and choose your own adventure style dialogue options, there is also a great amount of exploration to do in the game. This generally takes the form of the player controlling one character, walking through the environment to discover clues and collectibles, as well as to navigate to subsequent areas through simple, engaging environmental puzzles. The game is also extremely playable, even to the point where my mom was able to play and actually enjoyed it. Granted, she did kill off a lot of characters, but as it's never game over, she was able to move on and continue to enjoy herself. I can really see Until Dawn as a suitable replacement for anyone's scary movie night, with everyone having fun watching, making decisions, and playing out the story for themselves. In short, whether intentional or not, I really love how Until Dawn's design feels really inclusive and easily approachable for anyone looking for a scary good time. I also have to say that I really like how they handled collectibles in the game. Every clue you find not only gives more backstory, but also can affect how the game plays out based on how much information various characters are aware of. There is one clue where finding it is the only way to keep one certain character alive. I won't spoil this, but I think it was interesting how the information within a simple collectible actually directly affected the plot in such a drastic manner. The other type of collectible is the totem. These are essentially artifacts lying around which, upon inspection, give the player limited insight into possible future events through a short and often cryptic video. These fall into five categories: death, loss, danger, guidance, and fortune. Finding these totems is a good way for the player to be better prepared to make the right decision in the future. However, they are vague enough as to not be a trump card in the player's favor. Collecting these items also unlocks various pieces of a video called Events of the Past, which gives the player even more interesting backstory about the surrounding area. These collectibles, more than most games, do a great job of directly rewarding the player for their discovery, instead of just acting as part of a checklist or a roadblock for the Platinum Trophy, and I have to commend Supermassive for this decision. Overall, I really enjoyed Until Dawn. It started out being a game that I was barely aware of and ended up being one of my favorites from 2015. As an adoring and sometimes cheeky love letter to the classics of teen horror, Until Dawn is a welcome addition to the collection of any horror fan, and is a game that everyone can appreciate, pick up, and play. This has been Jordan with another Player 2 review.